Welcome to the podcast called The Battle for African Agriculture, where we wear the lens of political economy to look at Africa's food system and African agriculture. My name is Belay. I'm your host. I'm the General Coordinator of the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. Today, I have my sister here, Mariam Mayet. We've been together for close to 30 years now, for 3 decades. Mariam is a founder and executive director of the African Center for Biodiversity, a powerhouse organization based in South Africa that has spent decades exposing the risks of industrial agriculture and defending Africa's diverse and resilient food systems. Her work spans legal action, grassroots organizing, and policy influence across the continent. Today, we dive into one of the most polarizing issues in African agriculture: genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. But this is just a conversation about genes and science. It's about power, corporate control, resistance, and the very future who gets to shape Africa's food system. So join us as we talk about seed, sovereignty, and the fight for justice, with none other than Mariam Mayet, right here on the Battle for African Agriculture. Mariam, tell me about yourself. What first drew you into this work? Was there a particular moment or issue that shifted your path?
So first of all, I'd like to thank you very much, Million, for inviting me to this wonderful series of podcasts and also for celebrating our long years of friendship and struggle together. I think it's testimony to both our shared commitment to our continent and our people. I started actually this work when the biosafety protocol was being negotiated. And that was in 1999. And I went to Cartagena, Colombia on the South African delegation, representing NGOs. And on the delegation was also industry and a very pro-biotech South African government. And there, of course, I met our darling late Dr. Tawaldi. And that was the beginning of the journey that I'm still continuing today. And I think that it was the sheer might of power that the US government, Monsanto, and the biotech industry, together with the grain exporters, wielded in Cartagena that I think shocked a younger Mariam. But I think it also angered me. But more than that, it was also the battle that Tawaldi and the African group waged. On the one hand, and South Africa on the other. And I felt extremely committed to changing the South African position so that Africa could be united. And you must remember that in those days, the African Union was not what it is today. The African Union coordinated and facilitated the coming together of the African group. It raised money, it supported us, and it supported the drafting of the model law on biosafety and biotechnology, and also a separate law on the protection of community rights. So it was, in some ways, the golden age for African biosafety. And of course, Dr. Tawaldi's brilliance, his amazing ability to negotiate, not only for Africa, but for all of the developing world, had a very profound effect on me. And although the negotiations collapsed, it was one of the most, I think, pivotal moments in the history of my career. And shortly after that was the Seattle moment and the crashing of the WTO, which I also attended. So it almost seemed like 1999 was the year of awakening for me, political awakening, where the beginning of my anti-GM struggles began.
You know where I remember you? I remember you on the streets of New York, actually, during United Nations Sustainable Development, in what is usually called Rio Plus 10. You were participating and I was participating. I think that's where we met, in 2000.
It was those prep comms,
Yeah, the
weren't they?
prep comms,
We
you know.
never ever knew what we were doing at those prep comms, what was going on in those prep comms. But it was going towards a summit that South Africa hosted.
Yes, in 2002.
In 2002.
Yeah.
And it coincided, remember, with Zambia
Yes.
saying no to US food aid that was GM.
Exactly. I was collecting signatures from African participants. I do remember.
For a petition.
Yeah,
and
for a petition.
For a support for the Zambian government. And then I had gone to Zambia. And we actually went to visit the ambassador, the US ambassador to Zambia. And they were completely appalled that how dare Zambia have the gall to say no to food aid. And there was all these really highly propagandist news featuring Zambians starving, that they opted to starve rather than being GM fed. So it was very exciting kind of moments for the anti-GM movement, and I think that Europe was also in kind of the upturn of the anti-GM struggle at that time. They were battling, I think, the US. There was a trade dispute between the US and the EU in front of the WTO, and several EU countries had imposed a ban on GM. So it was a different era.
Yeah.
At the moment, I find that there's a lot of anti-GM fatigue.
Yeah.
Because it's been waged for such a long period of time. It's almost 30 years.
Yeah.
And after 30 years, the industry can't show anything more than a lousy two-trait technology, herbicide tolerant and insect resistant. And they can only show that they genetically engineered mainly 4 crop plants. It was maize, soya, cotton, and rapeseed canola. And they can show a lot of weediness, super weeds, insect resistance, massive use of pesticides, and none of the promises they made 30 years ago came to fruition.
Yeah, exactly. You have been at the forefront of challenging the corporate push for GMOs in Africa for over 2 decades now. For those unfamiliar, could you start by explaining what is at stake when we talk about GMOs in the continent?
Look, I have to tell you that Africa was not a pushover on the GM front. The first thing that happened was the US government, through US aid, began to do biosafety capacity building on the continent. And they began to write the laws for our governments. So the first area of contestation for us was against US aid and the takeover of our biosafety spaces. And there was pushback because we felt that first we were against the privatization of our seed and our rich diversity that we have on the continent, our traditional knowledge, our seed systems, our farmer-managed systems, our farmers' rights, our rich heritage, and our sovereignty, our autonomy, and our ability to make laws for ourselves. And this is why we drafted the model law, African model law. So there's been pushback because how many countries on the continent in the last 30 years have grown GM seeds in large quantities? It's South Africa, after 25 years of commercial growing, you have less than 3 million hectares. What is 3 million hectares? Compared to what Argentina and Brazil are growing, right? It's in the millions, the tens of millions. Then you've had the dismal failure in Burkina Faso with cotton. And recently the government threw target malaria out on the GM mosquitoes. Kenya, there's been pushback in terms of the court cases. There was a
Yeah.
ban for a long
Yeah.
time. Uganda, President Museveni has not signed the bill to allow commercialization. It's recently that they got a foothold in Ethiopia because of the mountains of money coming in from the Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
So I think that a key area of contestation for us has been this influx of funding
Yeah.
coming from Gates.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
funding has corrupted
Yeah.
our systems completely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the battle has shifted now a long time ago from the biosafety era and the
Yeah.
biosafety legislation to outwardly taking over our research institutions, research capacity, buying over our scientists. For example, when we went to Sharm el-Sheikh for one of the COPs and we were lobbying for a moratorium on the release of gene-drive mosquitoes, with Gates funding, they funded, I think, about 80 scientists from the continent, young scientists, to come and block. And they didn't even know what was going on. They just came there to block the moratorium. So whether it's through AGRA, the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, that AFSA has been campaigning against for many years now, or it's Gates' direct funding to research institutions, it's still this capitalist philanthropic money coming in that has created a huge challenge for us to try to protect African agriculture and our seed systems, because we now have the field trials being authorized for genetically engineered teff in Ethiopia. Now, to genetically engineer teff is like genetically engineering the identity of Ethiopians. Because teff is your staple food, but it's endemic and indigenous to Ethiopia. It's a superfood. It's got so many nutritional benefits, high in fiber. People eat injera several times a day.
That's breakfast.
If they haven't eaten injera
lunch
for
and
the
dinner.
day, they feel they haven't eaten.
No, they say
Because-
that there's a drug in it.
I will become, if I lived here, I would become totally addicted to injera. So I think the battle had different phases to it. You know, it had the biosafety capacity building takeover phase, taking over our space to draft laws and implement laws. Then it had an era where they were funding people like, do you remember Florence Wambugu? Who was the ambassador for Monsanto? But nobody talks about the failure of her sweet potato project, her GM sweet potato project in Kenya. Then they had the Makatini Flats cotton farmers in South Africa and took them to the US to parade in Washington to propagate the idea that GM is good for small-scale farmers in Africa. And I don't think they've given up completely on that, because now they're on genome editing. But the point is that whether it's genetically engineered seed, transgenic technologies, or genome editing with CRISPR, or it's so-called improved seed using conventional breeding to produce hybrids, commercial seed, all of this still threatens African agriculture. Why? Because our agriculture, aside from South Africa, is principally based on small-scale agriculture, small-scale farming systems. These small-scale farmers feed the continent. There's no dispute about it. They produce a huge amount of food that's eaten locally, eaten at the national level, at national markets. It's dependent on at least 80% or between 80 and 95% of seed that comes from farmer-managed seed systems. In fact, the figure goes up every year. I think between 10 and 20% of the seed that comes from commercial farmers, it's just 20% or so comes from the commercial,
depending on the country,
industrial sector. South Africa is different, but it could even be less, depending on the circumstances in each country. So I am concerned about the research capacity being taken over and the Gates institutionalizing philanthrocapitalism in our research institutions, because what it does is it displaces the breeding programs that support small-scale farming and small-scale farming systems linked with farmer-managed seed systems. It kind of offers a bribery system where scholarships are offered, per diems are offered for travel, publications, and then what would be the research in the public interest to support African agriculture? What's going to happen to the future? Because you need vibrant research institutions, you need partnerships between small-scale farmers farming agroecologically with plant scientists, entomologists, a whole range of scientists, where there's a marrying of traditional farmer community knowledge with other knowledge systems that may not necessarily be Western knowledge. Not all knowledge that comes from our research institutions are necessarily Western knowledge. There could be Africanized version of knowledge. So I'm concerned, that's my number one concern.
But you also talk about GMOs, not necessarily only a science thing, it's a question of power. What do you mean by that?
Look, I think that you have to understand that the idea about genetically engineering seed was spearheaded by the need to control the glyphosate industry, because glyphosate was coming off patent. And so they had to dream up something that would allow them to sell the seed with the glyphosate as a package. Because most of the glyphosate being sold in the world today comes from China, Malaysia, and it's all off patent. So I think it was a key driver. So when they engineered the seed, they also had to find the traits to do the transformation. It entailed patents on life, and then it allowed them the ability to buy up seed companies. So it was really principally agrochemical companies who bought up seed companies and biotech companies and even pharmaceutical companies, and consolidated all this power behind one industry that would supply seeds, fertilizer. Well, some of them supply fertilizer, but seeds, the pesticides, and the herbicides. Well, herbicides are in the pesticide umbrella, but also other pesticides that are grown with GM crops. GM crops are not only grown with glyphosate, it's also grown with a whole range of other pesticides. And then they would be able to charge quite a big royalty on the seed. The price of GM seed was much more expensive than conventional seed. And what it also allowed them to do was to become very concentrated. The market became very concentrated, and a lot of power was vested in only a few of these companies.
When they consolidate,
and they consolidated, and then a few years ago there was even a shrinking even of the net of players. So Bayer bought Monsanto, Dow and DuPont merged to become Corteva. Sinochem, which is a Chinese seed company, bought ChemChina, became ChemChina. They bought Syngenta. So the Syngenta group is actually the government of China. So you have like 3 big companies, and then BASF. So 4 of them control the world commercial seed and seed market. So this is the kind of power you're dealing with. You know, the power behind large companies that control of farm inputs that drive the green revolution. So the Agra project would be inextricably linked with
Yeah.
the market share for these same companies.
Exactly. So, what have you seen or heard from farmers on the ground about how GM is affecting their life in the seed saving in their autonomy?
Look, we did work. There were two sets of experiences we had firsthand in South Africa with farmers. Okay, the first was the Makatini flats. Those farmers were at the end of that project, after they introduced GM cotton to them. They never understood that they will become highly indebted. They already entered the cotton project indebted, but then they were paying huge amounts of money for seed, fertilizer, herbicides, pesticides, and at the end of the project, they were highly indebted. And the project actually failed. They had to close the gin down. And
Close the gin, what do you mean?
it was, the gin, Gin, the gin where they were,
With
where they would collect all the cotton, the bales of cotton, and take it to the gin where they would then separate out the balls from the lint and clean it. Yes. Those farmers we also took to India on a farmer exchange. And I think they felt very hard done by the whole project because I don't think things were really explained to them.
How many or how big this project is?
Look, it was quite a few years ago, but there were quite a few thousand farmers involved in the Makatini flats in northern KZN. It's near the Swaziland border.
Okay.
In northern KZN. And
KZN is KwaZulu-Natal.
And I think that they felt that there was not enough transparency. They were never explained that what GM seed was about. They were never given any training how to manage the business side of it, how much, how much inputs were costing, how much was being deducted from the sale of harvests, because they were given to understand that the whole project was subsidized and that the seed, everything was free of charge. But that was never the case. So I think that when the project failed, they felt very, I think, sore about the whole experience. Then in the Eastern Cape, another failed project, but that was maize, part of the massive food production program where the government integrated GM maize seed also as part of a similar project where farmers were told it's subsidized, but they would have to repay the costs from the sale of the harvest over time. And eventually the project also failed. And I mean, today, farmers in South Africa don't want, small-scale farmers I'm talking about, small-scale black farmers, refuse to, point blank refuse to grow any GM seed or have anything to do with any of these companies. They want to, there's a very, very strong desire and support to grow agroecologically, to grow and farm in systems that will be in line with the 13 principles of the high-level panel of experts. They want to grow, they embrace agroecology wholeheartedly. They embrace their farmer-managed seed systems. There's been a lot of, conscientizing done over time. And I think that if you speak to the farmers in Burkina Faso, they probably will have a more heartbreaking story to tell, because I think the government at the end of the day had to write off, I think it was $84 million, something of that nature, after the cotton failure in that country.
No, it's a disaster. How are biotech corporations and also philanthrocapitalists influencing the policies in Africa? How are they going about it? Are our governments being given a real choice?
I think that our governments are open to undue influence. Look, I wouldn't say they are outwardly corrupt or these governments have no autonomy or have no thinking capacity or, are just stooges of Gates. I would never say that. I mean, I think that there are some really serious people wanting to, that are engaged in our policy making. But I do think the impact of the funding and the agenda of philanthrocapitalism must have an impact.
And they are also debt-ridden, They are in debt.
They are highly indebted.
Yeah. So
Highly
when people
indebted.
come and dangle money,
They are
how
highly,
can
they on their knees because they can't, I don't know, how they imagine getting out of this debt trap of theirs. In fact, Africa paid its debt off long ago. Africa should never be caught up in this debt trap.
Yeah.
But they're highly indebted. There's very little that we resource rich and we resource poor. There's this anomaly because we've got a lot of this rare mineral wealth, we have other mineral wealth, we have oil, gas, our human capacities are very rich, our culture, music, art, dance, the diversity, seeds, food, all of those things. But we're also resource poor.
Yeah.
And this anomaly is something that our governments should iron out.
Yeah, but you know what I see looking at the Ethiopian government, and from what you talked about, the golden age of activism. The people who were there that time in Environmental Protection Authority or Ministry of Environment later are not there now. There's a completely new people there. And it was expected from us, at least, to engage these people and educate them and whatever. But that's daunting. It all comes to the resource and the energy and the fatigue that you talked about. So this is also one of the reasons, I think.
Yeah. So it's tough. It's a tough
it's really
challenge
tough, yeah.
because a lot of our governments don't take us very seriously. But at the same time, I don't think we must underestimate the extent of the agroecology revolution taking place in the world.
We'll come to that. I totally agree with you.
And I think EFSA has done an amazing job.
Yeah, we did.
Regard to agroecology on the continent, amazing. I think you really, and it doesn't matter if one goes to the African Union and the African Union doesn't want to give us a space to talk here and a space to talk there, and the Malabo Declaration is not a good document, because these things take time.
Yeah.
You have to plant the seed and you have to continue to advocate. Look how long we've been busy on GM, 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
But look at the successes. There's been successes. Just because they're going to experiment with TEF doesn't mean they're going to commercialize it. It may never happen. You see?
Hopefully, yeah.
Africa's unpredictable. Did we think that 2 or 3 weeks after they release the GM mosquitoes in Burkina Faso, that they'll shut the target malaria office down?
Fantastic news.
Did we think that they'll ban the import of GM in Kenya? And that ban stood for a long time until recently, and then it's now the subject matter of litigation. So it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
Because society is very active. and engaged. And so there's also this youth activism, the very hungry energy you could see in the protests in Madagascar recently, the uprising in Kenya, and other in developing countries, Nepal, and so on. So, you know, there's
Gen Z.
There's Gen Z. There's a lot of energy.
Morocco.
Morocco. So there's a lot of energy and a lot of activism and a lot of things boiling. And so one just has to keep on going.
Yeah.
And so I think it's exciting because the future will bear fruition of the work we are doing today.
Yeah. You've talked about decolonized research, and also you're one of the proponents of agroecology. Why do you think agroecology is a future for Africa?
I think that it's so well suited to our small-scale farming systems. You know, it's not a difficult transition for our farmers to make. I think that it's going to be more difficult for those plantation crops.
Yeah.
Those tea, the coffee, the cocoa, the palm oil, those plantation crops. And you know, you must remember also something very important, that the trade routes for the extraction of our goods and our services from Africa follows the slave route. So it's the same routes. So I don't think that's going to be easy for us.
Can you explain that a little bit?
What I'm saying is that the extraction from Africa of cotton, of rubber, cocoa, coffee, tea, all those plantation crops that can date back to colonialism. When they made the trade routes, the infrastructure, the routes to extract from the continent, it followed the old slave routes, the routes where they would take slaves out of Africa. And I think that it's something to bear in mind.
Yeah.
When we think about agroecology and territorial markets and trade issues. But I think that it is not a difficult thing for small-scale farmers to appreciate and understand, because agroecology is not a new concept for these farmers. Living in harmony with nature, farming agroecologically, like a zero waste policy on the farm, using natural resources, using farm-safe seed, growing many diverse crops, understanding which crops go with which, when to harvest, all this community traditional knowledge systems are very inextricably linked with agroecological practices.
Exactly.
So Africa is one of the continents that has the best propensity to have a successful agroecological revolution.
I agree with you. I agree. I've seen it. I've experienced it with farmers in Tigray, with Dr. Tolde in Sioux.
Yes.
If you go to southwest of Ethiopia, that's what you see. And in Uganda, I live in Uganda, the same. Yeah, I think I agree with you.
And I think that EFSA should keep on.
Yeah.
I think you've been doing a fabulous job, and you shouldn't be disillusioned.
No.
You see, especially if you're loving the Africa, because you're going into the lion's den there.
Yeah.
Where, you know, it's, at some stage I even wrote some papers about how the African Union has been captured.
Yeah.
And we've even protested in Zoom meetings against the African Union, the extent to which it's been captured. Of course, the African Union is a huge institution, but some components of it, and the agriculture component, the technology, biotech, and so on. But you should continue, because I think you've been doing a tremendous job, and you should continue to do it. There isn't much, by the way, of GM work that I can, you know, propagate and say to you, let's work on this together. There is very little going on. There's some stuff that's happening in Ethiopia. There's some genome editing going on. Everything is in the lab. It's all in the pipeline. Nothing near commercialization. It's a lot of it is hype. We don't believe it will succeed, just like the first generation. And they said they were growing GM cotton in Sudan. I saw no papers. We don't know. They said they're doing some GM mosquitoes in Djibouti. That's all untransparent. What else is there? There's a ban in court cases in Kenya. There's nothing going on really on the continent. Nothing really. So I think that on the GM front, we won. We won. We won the battle. We won in Africa. South Africa was always going to be pro-GM because we have our entire food system is industrial. The food that is being produced, that's getting to the national markets, are all from supermarkets, from mass mart, from industrial farming. So industrial farmers will always be the most likely farmers to grow GM crop plants. You can see in Argentina, it was the soya barons. The same thing in Brazil. And they were linked with the cattle barons. They were all the same, and it was that kind of value chain. But I think Africa has a very good chance of transitioning and embedding agroecology in its policies, but with money, implementation, because a policy without an action plan and resources for implementation is not going far enough.
You know, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think one thing that they say when they promote industrial agriculture or green revolution is that they can at least put food on the table of the population. Maybe that may be true for a country like South Africa, but the level of malnutrition, even if you get food, the level of the obesity and this non-communicable disease is a crisis. So can you say something about that? You know, you've done quite a number of research on
The first thing I'll tell you, Million, is that the hunger stats will shock you. 15 million people go to bed hungry every night.
Oh, really?
18 million people are food insecure. And these
18
figures,
million, okay.
18 million, and these figures don't change. We had a meeting recently, an urban food systems meeting, and we were looking at the interface between urban food systems and agroecology and food and nutrition. And there were these medical doctors who were giving these statistics and saying these figures are not changing. They're getting worse every year. And then we have this malnutrition because people eat huge amounts of genetically modified maize cooked in pap to fill their bellies with very little other
minerals, vitamins,
minerals, vitamins that the body needs. Maybe oily pieces of meat, very, you know, a lot of fast food intake, Kentucky Fried Chickens. People suffer from diabetes, hypertension. There's been a rise in cancers as well. Our population is not healthy, not at all. So yes, all of our maize is GM, it's a staple food, but we have these problems. And we have this inequity embedded in our food system. In fact, South Africa is the most unequal country in the world.
I know.
The most. And you can see when you drive around black townships, the conditions in which people live. Their conditions have deteriorated in the last 30 years since the ANC came into power. And so the contribution of GM to food security, I think, has been like in a negative balance. They've worsened food. They've contributed to food insecurity, obesity, malnutrition.
It's not talked about. What surprises me is if Africa wants to practice GMOs, the best example will be South Africa. If GMOs, industrial agriculture, whatever, cannot solve the problem of agricultural production and health in South Africa. Where can it succeed? It can't. The land is, very, very good land in South Africa in general. Hardworking people, water, plenty. I love South Africa. It's the most beautiful country that I know. Really, really nice country. But in terms of the food system, it's a crisis.
It's a crisis.
Yeah.
And the industrial agriculture farmers in South Africa have intergenerational wealth because apartheid favored them. And they have access to, they have secure water rights, secure land rights. So they have nothing to complain about. So they're in a good position.
Yeah.
But the majority of the people in the country are not benefiting from our food and agriculture system at all. So I think on the rest of the continent, they don't want to talk about this. They don't talk. They look at all the other aspects of South Africa. The industrialized part of it, the roads, the highways, the shopping centers, the malls, luxury homes, and they believe that this is synonymous with industrialization. This is synonymous with high-tech modernization, and that if we all modernize and we adopt biotech and all these modern technologies, we will end up having what South Africa has. It's like a very simplistic, reductionist way of looking at the world.
Yeah. In conclusion, what will you say to the people, to countries, and governments, to the listeners of this podcast, who say that I think we need to try everything, and GMOs are one of the ways of producing more food, we have to try everything, technology is not inherently bad. What would you say from your research and decades of activism and looking at especially South African scenario?
I'll just say that what more should we try? After 30 years, what has the biotech industry delivered for us? This is what we're saying. Where are all the promises? Where's the drought-tolerant traits? We are in court. We are before the Constitutional Court on the issue of the drought-tolerant trait. It's a two-trait technology. 2 traits after 30 years. 4 crop plants. How can this be a silver bullet?
Yeah.
How can this be about modernization of agriculture when you haven't moved beyond maize, soybean, canola, and cotton? You haven't moved. The traits are so old. In fact, one of the traits, the BT trait they're introducing in the, I think the maize variety in Ethiopia with the drought-tolerant maize under the Tela project, which used to be the water-efficient maize project funded by Gates. It's been rebranded Tela. It's an old trait that South Africa threw out because it doesn't work anymore and it caused a whole lot of problems in the field with pest infestation. So dumping old technologies onto Africa. So what is new about it? There's only old traits. They're being stacked together. And there's nothing innovative, nothing new coming out of the industry. Why should we embrace something that's
failed,
that's failed, failing, and yesterday's news? We must embrace agroecology. That's life-giving, flourishing, nourishing. It's a bringing together of the best in nature and the best in human beings. And that's the way forward for us.
Thank you very much, Mariam. It was a fantastic conversation. I want to spend hours with you. There are so many issues that we haven't touched. We've touched extractivism as a bigger agenda, ultra-processed foods. There's so many issues that we can touch. I hope we can meet again. And thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure, Million, my brother. And I hope to join you in a podcast in the future. And perhaps, if not in Addis again, in another part of Africa.
Obviously.
And good luck to AFSA with all your work, your wonderful work, and also for the future of your podcast series. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.